I'm here today with a wonderful, wonderful woman in the world of Bitcoin. I've got Susie Ward, who is a journalist for Forbes and the Chief Executive Officer of Bitcoin Policy UK. Hello, Susie.
Hi, Gary. Thank you so much for having me. That was a lovely intro.
Oh, really? I worked hard on that, so I'm glad it was good. Well, it's funny, from the first few episodes I've done, some of my friends who have listened to it have said, you need to introduce the guest a bit more because you just kind of go into the conversation. So that's my concerted effort. And if those friends are still listening, my guest just appreciated my introduction. So there we go.
It wasn't planned.
No, you didn't give me those words to say. It was all my own work. So the way I like to start these conversations is to go back to my guest's first experiences with money.
You know what? That's a really good question because I actually have a very strong connection with money, but in a completely different way. And I know where my connection to money came from. So I was 14 years old and my mum decided to give me an allowance. And so I had to budget at a really young age. So she added up all the things that she bought for me, like everything, shampoo, clothes, shoes, everything. And then she came up with a price, and that was my budget. And I had to, from a very early age, I had to make decisions between, would I keep buying Levi's, or would I shop in a charity shop, or would I go ice skating with my friends, or do I need to fix the hole in my shoes? And it really was like that. And she was very adamant that she wasn't going to bail me out as well. So I remember walking around with a massive hole in my trainers, and my uncle said to my mum, can't you afford to buy her a new pair? And her response was just very quickly, she's got an allowance. And so because I had this connection with money where I really appreciated the value, I also saw that my friends did not. And so I remember going around town one day, and we'd completely run out of money, and I didn't want to go home, but we were really hungry and we had to do something. And so we went round Tesco's and I had £1. And I managed to make this pound stretch. And my friend who I was with was just like, I've never had to budget before. That was amazing. And I thought, this is what I do. Like, I just know. And I realized in that moment that she wasn't going to make it. Like, even at the age of 14, I thought, oh no. And without saying names, she exactly how I kind of thought. She ended up with an incredible amount of debt, struggling with a big mortgage on a small property, like everything that you would expect someone who hadn't been taught the value of money or to appreciate, living within your means. It played out exactly as I expected. Even at the age of 14, I twigged that.
Yeah, that's an amazing life lesson that your parents gave you. Life isn't just about putting your hand out and things come to you. It's up to you. If you can have your designer jeans, but that might mean you have a hole in your trainers. If every child was brought up with that kind of approach, I think, again, the world would be a much better place. When it comes to sort of saving at that age, was that part of it as well?
There was no way that there was any room for me to save because there were too many pressures. I was having to make choices between going out or buying clothes at a really young age. And I remember seeing my friends literally get given money. So if they would say, oh, mum, I'm going to the cinema, and they would just, this was back in the mid-90s, they'd just take a tenner out of their purse and give it to them. And I'll just be like, it shocked me. I was like, what, you just get given money because you said that you're going to the cinema? Yeah, of course. Like, what do you do? And I'm like, I have to figure it out. But that kind of extended to like early teens as well, because I always felt very independent. So I went and I probably moved out of home probably quite early, too early. Maybe 17 is probably too early. But I just really wanted to be independent because I couldn't afford it, really. It was expensive. I had 3 jobs. So I was working 9 to 5 as a secretary on an accounts team. And then I was working 3 nights in a nightclub and then doing a 12-hour shift at a local leisure centre. So I worked really, really hard for my money. So having a strong work ethic combined with the ability to budget meant that even at the age of 17, I was able to support myself.
That's incredible. You lived by yourself then, did you? Or were you with other friends?
Well, I shared a 1-bedroom house with my friend. So we shared a bedroom and stuff. So it was like a weird little house share with my best mate, but it worked.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And so those disciplines that you were given by your parents at an age of 14, are you the same with your children?
Yes. So my daughter has an allowance, exactly the same thing, and we don't give her extra money. And unless it's Unless it's something really special that she wants, because I do remember that it was difficult, and I don't think it has to be as hard as it was for me. So, I will buy her cinema tickets. I don't think it's really fair with the cost of everything now. I think it is harder for her. So it's harder for me to work out exactly what she needs, because I don't know what she's going to do in a month. And going to the cinema now is like £15.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to budget. Well, how many times are you going to go to the cinema in a month? So I let her off a little bit, but she's still really good.
There are things like football clubs or whatever. My daughter does dance, my son does football. If I gave them a budget, they'd probably say, I can't afford to do that. I'd rather spend the money on, other things because of how much all those things cost. So, and of course, as much as you want to give your children good, strong foundations and disciplines about money and budgeting, I think you also have to recognise their peer group don't have probably those same disciplines. So having a little bit of wriggle room to say, look, okay, no worries. Here's a little bit extra to do that event that you want to do with your friends, because I don't want you to be sitting at home when they're going out having fun.
And they don't socialise enough, I don't think, kids of this generation. It was different when I was younger. All we did was go out. So keeping me in wasn't a problem for them. Because I was literally always out. Now it's like, come on, what are you going to do? Just go and do something. Like, encouraging them to actually leave the house is actually the hard part.
Absolutely. So from 17, you were moved out of home, doing 3 jobs. How did that evolve into you becoming a journalist then?
Well, no, it didn't really. So actually, understanding money, extending that, I was able to buy my first property when I was 19. And even though I know that university at that time was still a workable thing for a lot of people, it did help. It doesn't so much now. I mean, over 50% of the population go to university, they end up in loads of debt and their degrees are worthless. But back when I would have gone to university, I think the best thing I did was not go to university. And I didn't realise that until recently, actually, because while my friends were doing A-levels and going to uni and getting into debt, I was gaining work experience and going to evening classes, and I was studying and getting a qualification while it was being paid for by my employer. So I was able to buy my first flat, just 40 minutes outside of London, for 3 times my salary. You can't do that now. And even though that was tough, I didn't have loads of money, just the work experience, not starting my life off with debt, and buying a property at the age of 19 practically set me up.
Yeah, that's unfortunately much harder for similar age youngsters to do these days, isn't it? I'm quite keen on apprenticeships as an alternative to university. My niece is studying to be a solicitor through an apprenticeship, and it's just working brilliantly for her because she's getting work experience. She's client facing, whereas if she was at university, she'd just be racking up debt, and probably after 4 years, it'd be harder for someone to employ her than someone who's actually had years of experience in front of clients and with colleagues. So yeah, I don't know what it's for a different podcast, I guess. But yeah, the future of university education, or even education in general, is probably something that needs a little bit of rethinking and disruption, really.
Completely. I think apprenticeships are amazing. I think they're the answer to almost everything when in terms of education and making sure that people don't start their life off with debt. My friends left university at the age of 21 and all they'd known was school and spending money and not earning. By that time, I'd had 5 years working. I'd been a property owner for 2 years, and the only debt I had, I would have considered an honourable debt, which was a mortgage.
Yeah. Against an asset that was going up significantly in price year on year.
And I had no idea how much that was going to go up either. I mean, in the first 2 years that I owned it, I think it nearly doubled. Because I bought it at such a low price. It was in the late 90s. But that was luck. That wasn't judgment. Yeah, I'm not taking the credit for having this brilliant life plan. As I said, it was only something that I realised recently looking back, that actually that through that time I'd always felt like it was society made you feel like you should go to university and that's the path that you choose. You have to, otherwise it's frowned upon somehow. And it's only in recent years that I've thought actually every decision I made retrospectively was the best one.
Yeah, it's interesting. You kind of almost went against all of the perceived wisdom and advice, and yet you probably ended up in a stronger rounded position, shall we say, not just financial, but in terms of your work ethic and your life skills, in a much better place than had you just gone and got drunk at university and come out with tens of thousands of pounds worth of debt.
Well, my mum and dad believed in me because I left school. I was basically a school dropout at 15. The school system did not suit me. The teachers didn't like me. I was always asking questions that made them feel uncomfortable, obviously. And then when I left, I went to go and work in McDonald's with hardly any qualifications to my name. And my mum and dad were obviously panicking a little bit. And I said to them, "Leave me alone. I promise you I will find my way. Don't tell me what to do." That just worked because I'm not very good at being told what to do. So
Yeah.
just being left alone. And then I figured it out, but I had to follow my own path. The one that was prescribed by society was never going to work for me.
That's a really positive story. There's more youngsters today that will benefit from hearing stories like that, because everything they get told at school is completely counter to what you just described.
This is what I teach my kids. They learn certain things at school, and then they come home, explain it to me, and I unwind the damage. And then they go back to school and then they see it differently. And it's brilliant because, I mean, I'm not a massive fan of the current education system, but what it's really good for is showing your kids both sides of the coin. You know, what government indoctrination is, what it looks like, what they're telling you versus what's reality, and allowing them to actually see the world through two different lenses.
Yeah, absolutely. You must be the most popular mum at parents' evening. Oh no, Susie's coming.
There was actually one because my daughter was in a pathway class, so I don't know how she's my daughter, but she's very academic, completely unlike me. So they take like the top 30 kids and they make them work a lot harder than the rest of them, basically. And so these kids do 2 languages, whereas the rest of the kids do 1. And so I went to the language teacher and I was like, "Is that a good idea? Like, wouldn't you rather just focus on 1 and do it well? Like, these kids are not going to leave being able to speak French or Spanish. Like, why would you want to teach them 2? It just doesn't, oh, well, they're very clever, they're very bright, we think that they can handle." Well, they're not going to handle it, are they? They're just going to do 2 badly. Like, why wouldn't you just do 1? And then the woman was just like, "Oh my God, I feel attacked." And I'm like, what? I'm just telling you that it's ridiculous and that you should just kind of rethink it. So yeah, you're right, I'm not very popular.
Or maybe you should just be in charge of education policy UK as well as Bitcoin policy UK.
Hell no. We are building a new system. We are not focusing on the old one.
So how did you find yourself falling into journalism then? What kind of age was that?
It was relatively recently, actually. So my career was finance, accountancy, and then IT. And it was only because I had those jobs and those roles that I think that it led me to understanding Bitcoin. And that's why I do get quite frustrated with journalism at the moment, because when I look at the journalists that write about Bitcoin and I look at, say, their LinkedIn profile, they're writers that left university as a writer. Like, they don't have the work experience, the tech experience, the finance experience. And so therefore, although my background wasn't journalism and writing, it was my work experience and industry knowledge and learning the hundreds, if not thousands of hours of Bitcoin that I think has led me to be able to write about it. Had I not had that, I don't think I would be able to.
Let's go back then to how you first discovered Bitcoin.
So the first time I really noticed it, so I'd heard about it, it's on the edges, you hear about it and you disregard it like everybody does. And I was on a work call and my boss had said, "Oh, so-and-so's just bought some Bitcoin," and was really ripping into him and taking the piss and just like, "What an idiot," kind of thing. And I thought, "Oh, I wonder why he's reacting like that. Like, why?" And that was the first time that I actually took notice, just because of the banter, for want of a better word, that was occurring on this call about, you know, someone had taken an action and another person was kind of ripping into them for it. And I just thought, well, what is that? And because I'd heard it being disregarded a couple of times and heard about it, just being naturally curious, I was like, well, what is it? And I think it's because of the negativity, and it had only been negative, that actually made me want to know more, bizarrely. Maybe that's just my counterintuitive nature, just like when it comes to everything else in life. It's like, if I see everyone running that way, I'll go that way. I don't know.
So at that stage, was it, as you discovered it and you found out a bit more about it, what did your journey look like? Was it just a case of buying a little bit on an exchange?
So I wanted to buy some Dogecoin, and to buy some Dogecoin, I had to buy some Bitcoin. And then I bought some Bitcoin and thought, oh, I'll buy a little bit of XRP as well. So that's when the proper full-on shitcoining stage started.
Yeah.
But it was more experimental than anything else. It wasn't I wasn't even thinking about making money. It was more a case of, what is this? How is it different? Why do you do it like this?
That's really interesting. So I thought you were going to say it was a number go up thing. It was I can buy these things and they're going to shoot up, because that's how a lot of people, me included, first got into crypto and dabbled with some of these other coins around the periphery. But yours sounds like it was more just a technological curiosity.
It was, and there was an element of number go up, no doubt about it, because you hear about the price, and it was around about 2020 when everything was going crazy, and we know that a lot of money was being pumped in the system, and all that money was going into altcoins, and you could see, but the real first seed was just curiosity. What is this? How do you buy it? And just what is it? Because people use the word crypto, and you just think, well, what does that do? So yeah, curiosity, 100%.
And that was just on some kind of exchange, right? It was obviously just a Binance type platform.
It was actually in a hot wallet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exodus. You can't use it in the UK anymore.
Maybe we'll come on to that. So how did your conviction increase then? So was it mainly through education or other people influencing you? What was the shape of that?
I think once you learn something and then you read something else and then it leads you to something else, it just becomes an addiction, because it's fascinating. It's just a completely new world of finance. And because I had come from a world of traditional finance and insurance, working in the city, this was just completely different, but at the same time, very similar. And so, yeah, the whole thing was just led purely by curiosity.
And was most of your education from reading books? Was it YouTube videos, podcasts?
It was podcasts, articles. It was just doing your own research and just finding it out.
And did you have many friends, colleagues that were going on that similar journey? Or did you feel like you were in your own kind of little bubble of, I'm in the middle trying to understand this thing and the whole world is ignoring it?
Yeah, and I still feel like that.
Well, yeah, not much has changed in 5 years,
No.
right?
Nothing. Yeah, I mean, I still have family members that just really try and avoid talking to me because they don't want me to get onto the B word, But luckily, my husband was also interested. As soon as I mentioned it to him, well, actually, saying that, he did actually go back and look through his messages, and I'd been sending him articles on Bitcoin back in 2017. And he went back and looked through, and he ignored every single one that I'd sent him. He was like, he's since apologized. But luckily, when I mentioned it, I just said to him today, I said, I bought some Bitcoin today. And he's just like, it was only like 50 quid's worth. And then I did split 25 Doge, 25 XRP. Horrific, isn't it? But it's all part of the learning journey. As soon as I said that to him, he was like, how? What? Why? And he started asking me questions. So then from there, he started his learning journey, and then he would read something that was interesting, I would. And luckily I can discuss it with him, because if he didn't understand, I really would be on my own.
Do you still have patience, if that's the right word, for people today that do a similar thing? So they get into crypto first and go big on some of these other altcoins?
I do have a lot of patience, because I know that a lot of people that's how they start. And if that's how they start and that's how they come into it, then, being holier than thou and getting angry about it isn't going to help. That's not to say I don't get pissed off sometimes. Like I do. It depends on the circumstances. But I am learning. I'm still trying to be compassionate, because I do know that's how most people start.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I've found is being overly evangelical about Bitcoin can be very alienating and makes you look like some kind of weird cult leader that is trying to indoctrinate them and twist their mind. But it's hard, because when you're so passionate about something and you've done the work, almost sometimes I feel like I want to give them the shortcut to get there. But I don't think that's the right approach for the significant majority of people.
No, and don't forget, we're dealing with people in the UK that have experienced relative stability for the whole of their lives, and the instability that they face is insidious and slow, and it's not really hurting them quick enough. So you're up against people that have probably been brainwashed by the BBC and mainstream media, who have just about ticked along, survived. They're probably able to go on a couple of holidays, a car, whatever. All right, there's debt involved, but it's kind of working for them. It's not like the dire situation that you see in Lebanon or Argentina, where people are having to spend half of their day figuring out how they're going to get their money to hold its value. You know, when you're in that situation, then you'll pay attention.
Yeah, I think there are some signs, aren't there? If you look now at people's energy costs and just the cost of going out and doing a food shop for the same things in slightly smaller packages that cost a lot more money, and you know,
I bought some horseradish the other day, and it was like, it felt like it was double the price and half the size. Like when it turned up, I was like, what the fuck is this?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
how
yeah,
did that happen? And
yeah.
and I don't think people even really register shrinkflation either.
No, I think they do. Maybe if it comes to things like, I don't know, fun
Curly
size.
whirlies. Oh my god, curly whirlies. They were this big. They were this big.
But hang on, I'm gonna pull you up on
No,
that.
I
I
know.
think we've just got bigger, Susie. Unfortunately, I think when we were kids and we like had two hands on a curly whirly, now I could probably down a curly whirly in 2 bites. I reckon.
I think they have
I think
got
that's more because I'm just bigger than I used to be.
Could it be both?
Maybe. I remember a story once about Cadbury's cream eggs and the urban myth that they'd got smaller, and I think Cadbury's were adamant that they hadn't ever changed the size, but I suppose
I
they
don't
would.
think they have, but I do think curly whirlies have got smaller.
Yeah, I think that's true. And certainly things like, I don't know, dairy milk, they were probably, I don't know, just make the numbers up, 90-gram bars. Now they're 60-gram bars or something, and they're twice the price. I think one of the areas as well is around interest rates. When people come up to remortgage, probably going to go up a lot as well. No one's smashing down someone's door saying you're half as rich today as you were yesterday, but I think the pace of that change is increasing.
Yes, but people don't see that there's a solution either, and the solution they see is more government intervention. Unfortunately, they're not seeing that actually making government smaller would actually help them out.
The thing that I've been thinking about more and more recently, I heard it on, I can't remember which podcast I heard it on, but there was a guest that said that at the moment we're effectively stealing from future generations to fund our lifestyles today. And it's so true and it's so simple, but I don't think people really acknowledge that. It can't carry on, can it? There has to be. No, there's no accountability. There's no consequence. The whole, going back to you as a 14-year-old, if you spent all your money on crisps, then there was no more money. You couldn't buy your shiny new trainers.
I can't talk to many people about this because as soon as you start saying that you don't, tax is theft, that's a big jump for people to get to. But when you actually look at what we pay for, forever wars and debt interest and fiscal mismanagement, it's not going to good stuff. I would prefer not to pay my money in towards government sanctioned murder. I just don't want to. But yet it's expected that just because we vote in a government and that government is elected to make these decisions, that we just have to roll over and accept it. And most people do. And that, I find that really upsetting. I just think more people should be aware. But how can you do that when everyone's so time poor?
It's not the kind of conversation you have at the water cooler in the morning, is it?
No, I did actually try to bring it up at some Christmas Eve drinks. Sometimes when I go out for like socializing, because the conversation sometimes can be quite, there are so many things you can't talk about. And so therefore I quite often find it very boring.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I do actually often fall asleep in these situations, which isn't a good look when you're kind of like entertaining or kind of out. But like sometimes I want to inject some sort of something into the conversation, so I will throw these little things. But the way they're received, wow. Yeah, people have lost the art of conversation. It's not okay for me to say something and for you to disagree with me and that be okay. It's a case of you said something I don't agree with and therefore you're a bad person and I don't want to talk to you anymore. It's bizarre.
Yeah, I think we've lost the art of nuance and as you say, conversation and discussion, that often it's not a case of right or wrong and there are always shades of grey. And, if you don't talk these things through, you end up just holding things inside and having a different view anyway, but then not being able to share, not feeling able to share it. And that's not really good for anything. and it allows governments and the powers that be to keep a lid on us and keep a lid on those conversations, to stop those conversations, those progressive conversations from taking place.
And they are progressive, because I think when you disagree with people, that's when society progresses. It's at the edge of those conversations. And we saw it happening during COVID. There are so many taboo subjects, and if you didn't agree with the mainstream narrative, you were treated like a pariah.
Generally, the British like to have a little moan about things, but they're not really militant enough, like, say, the French, who, if
the Italians, they get really fired up, don't
they do. And I don't know, I just think if Rachel Reeves came out tomorrow and said we're increasing the age of retirement in the UK by 5 years, I think most people either wouldn't notice, wouldn't care, or would just shrug their shoulders and go, oh, well,
expecting that.
Yeah, I was expecting it. I can't remember what year it was, but all the riots, smashing down fronts of shops and looting, and
that's where I see we're going. I can see that that's the direction of travel at the moment, which is really sad. And I can see that people are disconnected from their communities as well. Another thing that I love about how Bitcoin fixes is that communities keep people in check. So laws don't. You can put a million laws in. It doesn't make any difference. Don't tell Freddie I said.
Your secret's safe with me. Don't worry. I'm sure he won't. I'm sure he won't listen to my podcast, so I think you're fine.
No, he won't, because he's heard everything that I've got to say. It's nothing to do with you. He's just bored with me. So the thing is my nonna was Italian, and she came over to the UK with my nonno, and they lived in Bedford, and that's where I was born. And they did all the kind of the shitty jobs that the English people didn't want to do. But they were still able to have a house, a car, and go on holiday. So they had everything that they needed, even though they were doing unskilled work. The village that she came from was a tiny little village 2 hours outside of Naples, or Napoli. And I tell you what, that place, it wouldn't matter what laws are in place. It was the nonnas that kept everything in check. You just didn't step out of line because you didn't want your community to tell you off, reprimand you. You didn't want the gossip happening. Like the community literally kept everybody in check. And so with the way that we've been disconnected from our communities, and how government has got bigger, and how everything is becoming centralized, Bitcoin disseminates that, and it gives power back to the community so they can decide what's good for them. I get quite upset when I see people spitting on the street. I just think it shows that they don't care about their environment, and they don't care about where they are. And then I used to get quite upset with the person, but now I don't. I actually get upset with the situation that they're in that makes them feel like that. Why do they not care? What's happened for them to feel so disconnected from where they live that they don't care about their community? Once you give people, well, we say it, don't we, with Bitcoin, when someone's got skin in the game, they start paying attention. Like if someone's got nothing, how do you expect them to care? And the more we take away from people, the less they're going to care, and the more society is going to decay. So we have to give power back to the communities. We have to run it like a little village in Italy where the nonnas are in charge.
Yeah, I agree. When you're in a concrete jungle with rubbish piled up, and you have nothing, and it looks like everyone around you doesn't care, then it's no wonder that you become disenfranchised and can't see a future. It's that whole thing of, if you don't have the community around you, the feel-good factor that the future will be good, then actually, sod it. I'm going to spit on the floor. I'm going to throw my can out the window of my car. I don't know how that changes. I don't know how.
What, with Bitcoin?
Well, no, no. I think if we could click our fingers and overnight everyone had the principles of Bitcoin within the way they live their lives, then those things would quickly change. But how do we get people to adopt some of those principles, either by encouraging them to find out about Bitcoin or just in general anyway? What
has to happen is we have to go through a period of instability, probably hyperinflation. Society has to break down. So many, I know. So I saw a mummy from school, and she was just like, well, I don't have much hope. Everything's really shit. Da, 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 da. And I think she wanted me to make her feel better. And I'm like, yeah, it's going to get worse. And it's going to get shitter. But then it will get better. But I think we have to go through a period of hell. And I think that's what we're heading for right now. And I think everything has to break down for us to rebuild.
When you say we, do you mean globally, or are you talking specifically the UK?
I think globally.
Do you think even with, again, without getting overly political on it. Is the US on a slightly different path, or do you think the same thing will happen there?
I think we're all on a very similar path, just in different tangents, very, very slight different tangents. Yeah.
Do you think there will be a black swan event that causes hyperinflation across the world, or is this just going to be a slow, steady, gradually and then suddenly type event?
I think it will be gradually and suddenly, and I think that everything is happening now. It's just being covered up. So I think it started in 2008, and I think it's been crumbling ever since. It's just they're papering over the cracks. So I don't think we need a black swan event. I think it's kind of playing out. It's just that it's being largely hidden.
And do you think, as a keen big Bitcoiner, an advocate for Bitcoin,
An understatement, yes.
yeah. Are you relishing the day when that happens, or are you sad that it has to happen in order for Bitcoin to probably get the prominence that you'd like it to have right now?
I'm really sad that it has to happen. I'm sad that it's come to this. Just like Bitcoin's inevitable, I think this is too. I'm resigned.
You think we've just gone too far? What is the road to clawing that back and getting us back into a position where we have a surplus and we can start investing in the future? I can't see it.
There's one option, and it's monetary debasement.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. It's or something that is probably unthinkable to most people, but has happened in most countries and in some fairly recently, which is a government just decides we're going to take off our people. We're going to, the richest will wake up tomorrow and 50% of the money that was in their bank isn't in their bank anymore because we've confiscated it to...
I think that's called a bail-in,
right.
Isn't it?
Okay. Yeah, I guess so.
That could be the term where they physically take it from you. So a bailout is where they help you to get out of trouble, and a bail-in is where I believe, you might have to check that, they physically take the money from people to fix their problems. And it's hidden. It's like I said, it's insidious. It's hidden from view.
So where do you see Bitcoin Policy UK as trying to help navigate the UK through these times? Like what are the key areas that you're looking to try and focus on and raise awareness of?
So we know that legislators are, especially the Financial Conduct Authority, are harming growth. They don't understand the difference between Bitcoin, crypto, meme coins, stable coins. They just don't get it. They've put everything under the same bracket of restricted mass market investments, which is not good, because you can't have Bitcoin that's a pristine asset being lumped in with a meme coin that anyone can spin up in an office. Like, that's just crazy. And then shutting the on-off ramps, making it really difficult for people to buy Bitcoin. We have to make sure that they understand the difference between Bitcoin and crypto first and foremost. So we also have an energy problem. And we know that Bitcoin mining can be a huge solution for that. But the problem is the incentives are not there for them to even look into it. So you know that we pay nearly £1 billion in curtailment just for wind. As renewables grow, that curtailment cost will grow. It's a no-brainer. Just mine Bitcoin. But while the government are paying these wind farms to switch off, they're never going to look at something like that. So it's education, really. It's trying, because we know it's complicated. I'm not saying that somebody should understand it straight away, but where do they get their information from? Crypto UK, the Digital Pound Foundation, these organisations that have spun themselves up, that really, when you listen to what they've got to say, just don't get it at all. So really, we have to be there, and we have to be the voice that says, this is wrong, this is how you should do it, this is why. So I don't want government getting involved with Bitcoin, but the problem is, if they're going to make a lot of very silly decisions that are actually going to actively harm growth, drive business out of the UK, harm investors, cause our energy bills to go up. If their actions are actually leading to a lot of harm and expense, then we have to be there to advocate for the right policies.
How do you keep your motivation going? How does it affect you? Like, do you ever struggle? Do you ever wake up in the morning and think, I can't do this anymore because I'm just knocking my head against a brick wall?
It's really hard, because Freddie and I have been working on this for 2 years, completely unpaid, while we watch some of these organisations who are heavily funded not produce the work that's even a scratch on the quality or the calibre of that we're producing. So that's soul crushing in itself, but you have to just keep keep going. It's also really difficult because, like, you're aware of Brandolini's law and the asymmetry of bullshit, that it takes 10 times more energy to refute, so that's also, I'm up against it with the mainstream media. Every time I see a BBC article come out that is wrong, it makes my heart sink, and I think, well, how much writing do I have to do to counteract that narrative? So it's coming at you on all fronts, and nothing ever feels easy. So yeah, it's really challenging. And then on top of that, my writing is not very well paid at all, but it's important, and I don't get paid for anything else outside of that. So I'm living essentially living on a shoestring just to try and do the right thing. So I've had to disconnect myself from the fiat system to make good choices, because we're all constantly incentivized to not do the right thing. But it's tough. It's really, really difficult.
So it sounds like a large proportion of your drive for doing this is almost altruistic. Yes, you have a vested interest in the sense that you are a Bitcoiner, but so have I. And I haven't committed and convicted as much as you have to trying to further the cause and do unpaid work to, well, not that I'm getting paid to do this. This is, I guess, this is my part.
Yeah, well, that's so important. Sharing stories, of course. Like, everyone's doing it in their own way. Definitely.
Yeah, but you're going above and beyond. And does there come a point where you just think, sod it, I'll move to a country where they're at least more open to Bitcoin, they're more progressive, they're friendlier in the respect of tax, etc. Does there come a point where you just give up on the UK?
Well, I've got kids. I can't do that. Any decision that I make, it has to suit them. So it's not just something like, I'll just be a digital nomad and just go and live somewhere else. Like, I can't do that. I don't want to leave yet, and I don't know where I would go. I mean, we've looked at many different options, but there's no perfect solution. And I think the thing that really does keep me motivated is having an awareness of, like my parents' generations as boomers, how the system worked for them. They worked hard, they sacrificed, they didn't go loads up, but they knew that would pay off. Kids these days don't know that those sacrifices are going to pay off. And so I really can't think of any better way of spending my time than trying to make it even just a little bit better for them. Because what else am I going to do? Like, go and get a fiat job, swap my time for money that's debasing, have it crush my soul while watching the world crumble around me? Like, that wouldn't make sense to me. So it is really, really difficult. But at the same time, I feel like there's no other choice for me. There's nothing else I could do.
Yeah, that's amazing. And on behalf of all Bitcoiners in the UK, thanks so much for everything that you,
No, don't
that
say
you have.
that. No, don't.
No, but it's funny. There are times where I hear people like Jeff Booth talk about them just literally.
He's just one step down from God.
Well,
isn't he? Like, I don't like putting people on pedestals, but my God, Jeff, he's so enlightened.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, I was on Robin Sayre's podcast, and at the end he says you have to ask a question for the next guest, and have a guess who his next guest was. How can I just come up on the fly with a question for Jeff Booth? Like, every Bitcoiner listening is going to shout at me and go, "What did you ask him that for? That's rubbish."
What question?
Well, you'll have to listen to his podcast to find out. I think it was something, I wasn't unhappy with it, but it probably, if I'd given it more thought, it maybe would have been better. But I think it was asking him what his view of his most significant contribution to Bitcoin has been. So, it's better than asking him what his favorite color is. But I'm sure there was a more insightful question that someone could have thought of.
No, that's a really good question. What I really like about Jeff, and I really do agree with this, and maybe we should all be more like that. It would require coming off Twitter, though, is putting your energy into the system that you want to see, putting your energy into the thing that you want, and I think that's largely, if I was going to summarize it, what I'm trying to do. So I went out with some work colleagues that I worked with when I was like 18, like back in the day, and we were just talking about, all this stuff. I was trying not to mention Bitcoin. And then one of my older colleagues said, "You should be a politician." And I'm just like, hell no. We're building a new system, right? The old system's bucks. Like, and she was just like, yeah, I wouldn't expect anything less than from you. It's like, yeah, exactly. You know, like, why would you put your effort into the old system? We need a new one.
Yeah. But I also think we all find our own pace and our own journey through that. And to look at someone like Jeff, who's done what Jeff's done, which is, as you say, effectively say, I don't want to contribute to this broken system anymore. So I'm going to remove myself from it completely. I mean, that is a level of conviction and sacrifice, frankly, that just blows my mind. And
this is the thing, and I've fallen into that trap of categorizing people as good and bad Bitcoiners, or they're not really a Bitcoiner, because and I've done it. I've do it, but at the same time, I just think I shouldn't be putting what I think a Bitcoiner should be onto somebody else.
No, I 100% agree with that. My journey in was, I put in X, I get 5X, I cash out back into fiat and buy myself a nice flash car. You know, but now my journey is, I would not, that isn't even part of my thinking now. That's not the fiat value of Bitcoin doesn't really affect me. I'm completely zen when it went up to nearly 110, when it went back down to 80, 79. It pretty much means nothing to me now, because I'm not selling it.
I don't even check the price. Like, people talk about it and I'm just like, I haven't got a clue. It's the least exciting and interesting part of Bitcoin for me.
That's an evolution, isn't it? That only comes through your investment in understanding and education and your level of conviction to what you're putting your time and effort into. Maybe this is me just trying to justify the fact I'm not Jeff Booth, but you know, when you do have a house and a mortgage and kids and a wife and responsibilities and dependents, you know, as much as I have really strong conviction, I can't be 100% in, because if I'm not right, I'm not just affecting my life, I'm affecting...
Well, hang on a second. Bitcoin is inevitable. Let's just work from that benchmark, shall we? Like, it just is.
Yeah. But if it's inevitable in 40 years, 50 years, I may not be around to see that inevitability. In which case, in the meantime,
you have
I still need to work. I guess it's working. I guess the balance for me is trying to have a large foot in that future camp while still dipping a toe in the current system, not trying to support it, but accepting that I have a limited choice to extricate myself completely from it.
Yeah, of course, you've got to interact with the current system. There's you can't avoid that. You've got bills to pay. You know, it's hard to work in Bitcoin. It's hard to make money in Bitcoin unless unless you're applying the fiat system over the top of Bitcoin. You know, like, all the people that make money in Bitcoin are fiat people, really, aren't they?
Yeah.
Kind of. And even I'm uncomfortable saying this, but kind of pretending to be Bitcoiners, you know, everyone's a Bitcoiner. So that's why I'm not really entirely comfortable with making that, you know, but talking about the evolution of the journey, it's the only way that you can make money in this space is to have a fiat mindset. I want the world to be better in the future. I want people to be happier, and I want them to have purpose, and I don't want them to be trapped by this debt trap or society. We're on a path where we can choose freedom, authoritarianism. I want the world to be free, and that's it. And that's the only thing that I want to work towards is freedom, choice, and for people to ultimately be happy and fulfill their potential, rather than this really horrible world where it's dog eat dog and people are miserable and everyone's fighting and blaming each other. And it's not how we're supposed to live. It's not good for our souls. It's not good for humanity. It's not good for our children. It's not good for anything.
How do you think, when you see people like Gary Stevenson, who brings the name of Gary into disrepute, I'm afraid. We won't mention Gary Glitter, but Stevenson's probably...
There's another name, though. I've never met a good one. It's Bill. There seems to be a lot of bad Bills in the world.
Okay.
Bill Cosby, Bill Gates.
Yeah, okay.
Bill Clinton.
Yeah. Well, I'll try and do my bit to improve the reputation of Gary.
Side of things.
But there you go. But he is getting a lot of airtime, or maybe it's my echo chamber that's making it come out. I don't know, but he's getting a lot of airtime. And how do we as Bitcoiners, and actually, how do you as Bitcoin Policy UK, try and stir up some of those emotions that people like Gary Stevenson is stirring up in people, but for a more positive, progressive outlook around things like Bitcoin?
Well, I just keep writing about the good stuff. So there's a lot of good stuff to write about. Regardless of the articles that come out of the mainstream media, which would make you believe that everything about Bitcoin is bad, I just keep writing good stuff, and researching it and highlighting people's work and the projects that are happening. That's the best way to do it, is just to show people.
Isn't a lot of that, though, positioning more to the powers that be to encourage them that this is something that should be considered more from a top-down perspective in government, rather than trying to kind of stir up the bowels of the people that are thinking about rioting on the streets? Like, does Bitcoin UK need a maverick, not like Gary Stevenson, but someone who, I think that the challenge in my head is back to this: if you started talking like that about Bitcoin, people are at 0.0001% of their journey. All they've heard is bad media press about it. So I don't think anyone could be like that about Bitcoin, because all it would do is reinforce the poorly held views of what Bitcoin is to the general public anyway.
Very important to us as an organisation to remain apolitical and balanced. And I think that with the way that game theory is going to play out globally, it's going to do our job for us. We just have to make sure that the foundations are right, that we're strong, that we're here, and that we're present. And when the time comes, Freddie and I have had a couple of meetings recently, like we can feel the change. We are starting to be listened to. We've had a couple of meetings with people that would have been unthinkable this time last year. So I think that the UK is screaming out for new ideas, and it needs Bitcoin. So once the penny drops, we're not going to have to be like bad Gary. We can just be there and be a neutral, apolitical organisation that just wants to help and educate and give people the guidance that they need.
Yeah. And in the meantime, so that sounds like the majority of the public are just going to have their fingers burnt, sadly, right? Because there is no other way. And for the people that are closest to you, friends and family, what's the approach you take to try and get them on that life raft with you?
I've just bought an "I Told You So" t-shirt.
I love it.
That's as far as I'm going to go. I tried.
Okay. So, but in all seriousness, well, maybe that is you being serious.
Being serious. So, look, listen, they know that I'm here if they want to talk to me.
Yeah.
I'll help educate and talk to people. I don't have any Bitcoin. I can't give any away, but I can help people, and I will. I can just be a source of information. That's it.
Yeah. And you can't. Your role in all of this isn't to be Noah trying to get all the animals 2 by 2 onto the. In fact, that is not even the right analogy, is it? Anyway,
It could be, yeah, because it's a lifeboat, isn't it? Yeah, I do like that analogy. Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, so it's you're there to do the job you're doing. It's not your responsibility to try and persuade everyone in the UK, let alone your closest family and friends, that they need to be getting on that raft. If they see the water coming up to their knees, they need to start asking why their feet are getting wet.
They know where I am.
Yeah.
And that's all I can do. I think the more you try and convince people, the more they push against it. So it is really best just to make people say, like, if you want some information, I'll absolutely help you. But I just don't talk about it anymore. It's much easier. Like, if I'm surrounded by people that know what I do and we are still early, there is still time. So yes, they can come to me at any time and I will help them with anything that they need help with. And because we are still early, I don't think that they've missed the boat, to use your analogy.
Once you've done the work, once you've researched and understood what Bitcoin is, you realise how early we still are. But I still get people saying to me, do you have to buy one? One of the most basic elements of Bitcoin is 1 Bitcoin is 100 million Satoshis. Now, do you think if Bitcoin was priced in fiat world as a Satoshi, it would be easier to get people interested in buying? Or do you think, again, it's the lowest level of understanding and education? If you can't even jump that hurdle, you don't deserve to get in it.
No, because I don't even think it's about jumping through hurdles. It's about where do you start? So I know lots of really switched on, curious people that have approached me, and when anyone approaches me and asks me, obviously I jump to the chance. It's like, oh my God, someone wants to listen. But they are like those basic questions, like, why is it so hard? And my answer is always because we are early. It would have been harder 10 years ago, and you'd have been really early. The easier it is, probably the higher the price will be. So, you have to just put in a little bit of work. And the other thing is, where do I start? It's like, I just don't, I can't answer that. So I send a few resources through, but like, you've got the whole internet and you want to learn about it. And there's a whole load of noise and distraction and altcoins and all this shit. And it's like, and then you got the BBC, and then you got the Daily Mail or whatever they write. Like, how do you sift through all that? So I don't think it's their fault. I think that there's too much noise, and it's really difficult because because we are still living in a fiat system, and everyone's still trying to make fiat gains.
Yeah.
And so with that comes clickbait, bad incentives, and it skews everything. How does someone who is curious successfully navigate that? It's not easy, and I don't blame them for not knowing.
No, but I think having people, hopefully like us, as access to have conversations with in an open, progressive way, rather than not being preachy about it, just looking to educate and help people answer the questions that they've got. And like you say, it's certainly less risky now than it feels it ever has been. I think Bitcoin going to zero is pretty much off the table, which you probably wouldn't have said even 5 years ago. And even just the access to being able to buy it is so much easier. I go on about how great Strike is because it's a perfect bridge between the fiat world and buying Bitcoin, because it gives you an e-money account in your own name. So you shouldn't really have trouble sending money to yourself from yourself. It doesn't always work that easily, but generally it's Bitcoin only. It's a different world now. So it's easier, but a lot of those media narratives still persist. So it's still a hard mental hurdle to get over for a lot of people.
It is still tricky though. Like, say if you decided that you wanted to go all in and you wanted to sell your house and put it all into Bitcoin, that would not be an easy thing to do if you're in the UK.
It wouldn't be easy because you couldn't get those sorts of funds into Bitcoin easily, you mean?
The on-off ramps are not easy, and the questionnaires that you have to fill in, and the fact that it can't be more than 10% of your net wealth, otherwise you've got to tell a lie on the form, all that kind of jazz.
Yeah. And or having more information about peer-to-peer and non-KYC purchases
And
or
the KYC
OTC.
aspects as well, yeah. And even that I think is dangerous. I mean, when it comes to what they want to do with KYC, it's just creating a honeypot for hackers. I don't trust these people with my data, and if I was going to sell a property and put it all into Bitcoin and have, I don't know, like whatever 20 odd Bitcoin, I haven't done the maths in my head, I don't want that information traveling with my details for someone to find, and then to have a kind of, for then that to then manifest in the real world as physical violence. I mean, that's what has happened with these really awful, overreachy KYC rules. I think it's dangerous.
Yeah. Okay, conscious of your time, Susie, before we head off, there's one last question that I ask for all my guests, which is, what's one belief you held before Bitcoin that you've completely changed your mind about?
That the government have our best interests at heart. I mean, I'm not saying that I always thought that. I just didn't think that they were as bad as they really are. I thought that they were just there and that was that. But now I can clearly see that they do not work for the people.
How does that make you feel?
Like I've got to build a new system.
Very good. Very good. And if people want to reach out to you, where's the best places to find you?
It's probably Twitter, yeah. Although going back to Jeff Booth, also Noster. Like I'm on both, but yeah, just at @DissentSuze on Twitter. Yeah. It's probably the easiest one.
And then do you want to do a quick elevator pitch for Bitcoin Policy UK for anyone who's interested in finding out a bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. Go and check out our website. It's amazing. All of our proof of work is now in one place. It's phenomenal what we've achieved in the past couple of years as a volunteer organisation. But the fact that we are volunteers means we need funding. Like we need funding and we need help, because if we don't exist, then the likes of Crypto UK, the Digital Pound Foundation, and any other organisation that decide to be an authority on this subject are going to spin up. And we need to make sure that doesn't happen.
Absolutely. Could not agree more. Well, thanks so much for your time today, Susie. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you, Gary. Good Gary.
Good, Gary. Yeah.